Here we go. Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
All right, guys. Showtime.
Hey, guys. Showtime.
All right, showtime.
All right, showtime.
Hey, showtime.
Showtime, kid.
Let's bring it in. It's showtime, right?
It's showtime. Let's kick some ass.
Ed Berliner, the fastest show in sports.
Greetings, true believers. Welcome back into the fastest show in sports. I am your host, your ringmaster, Ed Berliner. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be joined by Mike Wise a little bit later on as he is stuck in traffic in Panama right now. That's the way things happen in real life. But I am thrilled to be joined by a great friend for many years, 34 years with the Los Angeles Times, and I believe she was the first hockey writer to appear on my radio show, which at the time was called Ed Berliner's Press Box, which goes way back to a long time because we had a lot of hockey writers on. It is a pleasure to welcome a Brooklyn native, and I say that proudly as another native New Yorker. Helene Elliott joins us on the show. Helene, it is a pleasure to see you again, my friend.
Well, I can put on my resume that I was the first hockey writer on your show. I didn't even have that on my resume. Very nice.
Yeah, it was. I think it was you, and if I remember right, we followed up with Kevin Allen. Used to be with USA Today, and now Kevin's retired, I believe. But
Yes.
I distinctly remember that. And here's the thing. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to pull up some of the clips from that. I have every cassette of every show that was ever done. And that's got to be from like the 80s and 90s. And my wife keeps looking at me every time she sees the box and says, when are you going to get rid of these things? I said, yeah.
Yeah, I have all these tapes and CDs that I have no instrument to play them with. I mean, it's just they're all sitting there on the desk, and it's what am I going to do with these? But you can't part with them.
I actually got, I don't know if it's here on my desk. Yes, because of all the darn cassettes that I have, people who are watching on the YouTube channel, I actually went to YouTube, Amazon, and I bought an old style cassette recorder or cassette player that actually has plugins to go into the computer to transfer.
Oh, perfect.
So, I mean, that will be when I have spare time, which will be about 2072 or somewhere around in there.
I have a cassette on my desk sitting there, and I was wondering what to do with it. I can't even read the label. It was in my husband's handwriting, and I can't read his chicken scratches, but yeah.
Yeah, that's just get one of those, and then you can transfer it over to the computer. That's what I must have between that and TV. I must have about 6 months of recorded material that I could go through. And one of these days, I plan on doing it, but I just don't know when I'm going to get to it.
Yep.
All right,
Very vague someday. Yeah.
You know, seeing as we're here and we talked about hockey, we've got a number of things that I'd like to talk about today. But I do want to bring up, certainly, and start with hockey, because you had indicated something as well about All-Star games. And for many people who don't know, we are taping this on the Tuesday before the baseball All-Star game. So we're going to be discussing that as well. But the National Hockey League, I got to tell you, Helene, I was at the Sunrise All-Star game a couple of seasons ago. I had never gone to an All-Star game, so I decided to actually go. It was right down the road. It was, with all these different competitions, it was the most boring thing I'd ever been to. It was just dull. And I thought to myself, they got to do something here. They brought along the Four Nations, which was brilliant hockey. But all the players that were injured after the Four Nations, how are they going to continue this? I mean, they have got the Olympics in 2026. But even I'm thinking, so many key players, like I'm a Bruins fan, so Charlie McAvoy got hurt. He was out the rest of the season. What can you, is it worth it to basically take one of your star players and have them injured for the year when the Stanley Cup is more important than the Four Nations?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think it's one that every sport has been wrestling with. I mean, the Pro Bowl used to be kind of a big deal. And does anybody care about that anymore? I
No.
know they've tried different like skills competitions, and the NBA has done the same thing. I mean, I love the NBA, but I can't stand All-Star games. I won't watch them because if there's no defense, what's the point? I mean, who wants to watch a game of, 164 to 161? It's like watching an old ABA game,
Well,
Um,
and that's the thing that turned me off. I think All-Star games at the beginning was the NBA. The NBA
yeah,
All-Star game is a joke. Now, you're right. If all you want to do is see absolutely no defense and see guys putting up threes and being given free lanes to the basket, but then again, I guess it makes it sells. I mean, that's at the
does
end
it?
of the day, I guess it sells.
Does it?
Good question.
I mean, I'd like to see some stats on that, and I would suspect that all these leagues have tried all these things, and the NHL tried this like mini tournament kind of thing where it was division based, the All Star teams, and they'd have four All Star teams, and they'd play each other, and then the winners would play in a finale, and they made it interesting by offering $1 million prize money to the winning team. So that seemed to ratchet up the interest a little bit, certainly the interest among the players anyway. But even that grew old very quickly. I think honestly, all-star games are just an outmoded concept. If the players aren't going to try, what's the point?
Well,
I know people say that, oh, fans love them. Do you really enjoy watching your favorite player not try?
it's a good point because those of us who've covered sports for any length of time know that there's a competitive level and a competitive nature of the athlete themselves. And we all know that when it comes down to all-star games, it's a gag. It's a joke. The players hang around, they spit stories around. Nobody wants to go spikes up into second or third base. Oh, by the way, do they slide anymore in baseball? I don't know.
Do they bunt anymore? Yeah.
Do they bunt anymore? I mean, do they do anything that's really baseball in itself? But I can't think of any reason to want to go see it when all it is just it's a parade. But
Yeah. And
I,
it's for sponsors. I mean, I get that. These leagues have contracts with these huge companies, and the companies want, the company VPs or presidents want to be thought of as VIPs, and they bring in all these, corporate people and, treat them to dinners and all these things. And so it's become more corporate than it is for the fans. And I don't know the answer. I think the Four Nations tournament that the NHL had was an excellent idea. And isn't the NBA thinking about doing something that's nationality based?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So you see, I mean, at least they're having the courage to try something new. Whether it
Well,
succeeds, I'm not sure, but at least you have to try.
well, let's get back to the Four Nations though for a second, and back to my main question, which is all of the players that were hurt. Kachuk was hurt for the Panthers. McAvoy was hurt
Mhm.
for the Bruins. I don't have all the list in front of me, but I know there were a lot of nagging injuries here. Fans loved it. It was an all-star game that actually for the first time had real live play. I mean, these guys were beating the crap out of each other, and it was solid hockey. But do you mortgage the chance to win a Stanley Cup just for what is basically an exhibition?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, although, you can go out on a random Tuesday night against Columbus and blow out your knee. It doesn't have to be in the Four Nations. I
But at
mean,
least it
you,
counts.
yeah, it counts in, a Tuesday in February. But yeah, I mean, any game is going to carry some inherent risk. And I mean, heck, how many times have you read about players getting injured in the shower or cutting their hands on steak knives or something like that? Although some of them I'm suspicious of, but that's another story, I guess. But yeah, but I mean, any sport, there's a risk, and you have to look beyond the individual to the greater good of the sport. Did the Four Nations tournament work for the greater benefit of the NHL? I would argue that it did, even though it had a lot of flaws. I mean, for example, Andrei Kopitar of the LA Kings is from Slovenia. And I think at the moment he may be the only Slovenian player in the NHL, maybe one other. There was one other, but I don't know if there still are. But, he didn't get to play in this kind of tournament, and he should have. The man has world-class skills, but there was no Slovenian team. So it was great hockey, and I was certainly skeptical of the whole thing before it began, but then I started watching it, and you could see these players cared. There was hitting, there was checking, there
Yeah,
was patriotism and national pride in that thing, and the level of hockey was absolutely outstanding.
I
So I think for
saw.
the moment,
Yeah,
that's the best option.
that's the other point too. It's the best option because the All Star game was boring in itself. The skills competitions. I remember going to the skills competitions. As I mentioned, it was one of the nights we went in Sunrise, and I wanted my money back. It was we paid as fans to go there. I took my wife, and we're big hockey fans. I turned her into a big hockey fan years ago when we got together, and even she looked at me and said, "Is this it?"
Yeah.
She said to me, "I'd rather go to." She said, "I'd rather go to an NBA game," and I hate NBA games. It was.
Wow.
She's
Gotta
not
work
an
on her
NBA
with
fan
that,
at
but,
all. She doesn't want to go. I indoctrinated her into the hitting of hockey, and those skills competitions were just awful. So moving forward, then though, is there any way to ameliorate that, Helene, that injury factor, or do we just take it as a fact that it's great, go with it, it's hockey? Well, look, when we get to the Olympics in 2026, these guys are going to go full bore. They're going to go all out when they're playing for their national teams. And that, again, is in the middle of a season that still may impact the Stanley Cup.
right. I remember one year, I forget which Olympics it was, but Joe Sakic got hurt and was out for a considerable time after the Olympics. But I think you have to look at the greater good, and an individual owner, like certainly the owner of the Bruins wasn't happy Charlie McAvoy got hurt in the Four Nations. But again, you have to look at the greater good of the game. Does this grow the game? Does this attract more eyeballs? Does it attract more dollars? Does it attract more corporate support? And I think in the end, it will. I mean, I've always been a proponent of NHL players being in the Olympics. I think the NHL was stupid to skip the last two. And the reasons were because the time zone was not amenable to NHL and North American viewing. They were both in Asia. And I think going back to an Olympics where the time difference is not so great from Italy to the American East Coast, I think it's an absolute necessary step, and the players wanted to be there. They've made it very clear that they wanted to be there, and I think it should be tremendous.
Does the National Hockey League need to just accept that it is a niche sport? It is not going to be as big as baseball or football or basketball in America. To cultivate those fans that really love the sport, keep them happy, and just move forward without always worrying about the Joneses.
I absolutely agree with that. I think they should focus on doing very well what they do. And that is be a niche sport, be a sport that has a certain demographic, be a sport that relies heavily on the Canadian audience and the Canadian heritage. Instead of going back to Quebec City for a possible expansion team, they're talking about going back to Atlanta for a third time. I
Oh,
mean, at what point do you accept, you know what? It ain't gonna work there. Put it
yes.
someplace where it'll be appreciated. Whether that's Quebec City, I'm not sure because sentimentally, I would love to see a team back in Quebec City. That was always a favorite stop on the NHL tour for writers. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful city. But, the reality of hockey and every sport now is the media rights money and the corporate money. And I don't think Quebec City has a strong enough base of corporate headquarters and corporate powers that can buy luxury boxes and can be a major sponsor of a team. Um, so I guess we're going to see, who knows, Kansas City or some other places. But I just, every time I see rumors about the NHL going back to Atlanta, I just shake my head and go, why put yourself into a situation that has twice proven itself to not be sustainable?
Having said that, then, is they're even talking about going back to Phoenix one day. I don't see any reason to look. It's nothing against the people in Phoenix, but I don't see any reason to go there because it simply, for a number of reasons, it didn't work there. I'd rather see them go to Houston, actually. I think Houston would be a fairly decent market.
I think Houston would be a terrific place for them to be. Absolutely. Think of the rivalries. Dallas-Houston rivalry. That would be tremendous. I just, Phoenix in the beginning, it was a novelty and it worked. I remember going to, must have been 2012 when the Kings were in the conference final against Phoenix. The atmosphere was great. They were in the rink downtown, which had its faults with the poor vantage points, but it wasn't built for hockey. It was built for basketball. So there were a lot of obstructed view seats. But I mean, that city was really into the Coyotes at that point. They left their fan base and they moved away to Glendale. And that was just a disaster almost from day one. Plus, there were so many ownership issues. The money wasn't there. The foundational operating money wasn't there. But Gary Bettman, looking at the rank that Phoenix metropolitan area has among TV markets, was intent on getting the NHL into that market.
Well, there it is. It's part of the argument of the niche, because you're so worried about the TV market. Stop worrying about that. Every sport, I think, especially the NHL, needs to stop worrying about that. If you have a hard core of 20, 30,000 people or whatever it is that'll show up every single night for a game, that'll love it, that'll embrace it, the sport can then grow incrementally, and you can have some fun with it. Otherwise, you're blowing smoke and wasting time in places like Phoenix and Atlanta.
Well, I think too, one of the things that the Kings have always done, and something the Ducks certainly, is build up local hockey, build up kids hockey, not only in the sense of getting future customers, although I'm sure that's part of it, but get interest in hockey, get the kids playing. That draws the parents into it. And maybe, you're seeing now kids from San Jose, kids from Southern California, kids from Phoenix in major colleges, in junior hockey, in the NHL. That takes time. But I think the best thing for a team in a new area is to invest in local grassroots programs.
Well, I'm seeing too. Look, we have a Florida player, a Florida-born player, and I'm sorry, my memory goes, who's in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. I mean, we have Florida-born players that are there. The Panthers have done a great job in creating that local community issue of hockey, if you will. But that leads to the next thing. Helene, and I love this kind of conversation about hockey because I'm such a big hockey nut. Why don't people embrace this sport? It's got everything. It's got the fastest, most physical players in the world without question. The best conditioned athletes in the world. It's fast. It's violent. It's got everything that everybody wants about a sport. And I keep hearing people go, "Oh, I don't like hockey. I can't follow hockey." What are you, crazy? It's not that hard.
I think people are thrown off by the whole offsides and icing thing. They claim they can't possibly understand it, which is, I think, kind of an excuse for, just saying that they just don't like the sport. Okay. But I mean, the thing is too, is how many people grew up with hockey? I mean, let's say on a lunch break, you're going to go out and play pickup basketball. Are you going to go out and play pickup hockey? No, it's too expensive, first of all. Second of all, you don't work with enough other people who can play and who would want to do this. And third, it's so expensive. And that is probably one of the big problems that I don't know how the NHL will solve.
I don't think
the expense of playing hockey.
I don't think they do solve it. I hate to say that, but again, it comes down to that whole niche idea. You don't solve it. I mean, look, you have people are using sticks and rubber balls now with nets that they set up in playgrounds these days, where
There's
it's
always
not
been
that.
roller hockey. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, kids on my block would play roller hockey. You set up, nets in the middle of the street, and when the cars come through, somebody would yell, "Car coming," and you all move over to the side, and that was our version of hockey. But it's still such a cultural gap here and a financial gap. I mean, you can put on a pair of sneakers, go play basketball in the schoolyard. You can't do that with hockey.
Well, but wait a minute. But you can actually, if you think about it. I mean, just wear the sneakers. The nets aren't that expensive. You can get them, and you use
but
sticks and the rubber
that's
balls.
a form of hockey. It's not hockey.
But wouldn't it
It's
get
not.
somebody at least interested in hockey?
Absolutely, absolutely. But the expense. But then you start saying, okay, I'm going to go play on a in a men's league on weekends or co-ed league on weekends, and look at the expenses you're
That is.
jumping into.
Yeah, that
There's
is.
ice rental, skates, sticks break all the time, pads, you need all the equipment, and, ice rentals are very expensive, so teams are gonna be probably sharing ice rentals and, fees, and, it's just a very expensive sport to play, and as you said, I don't know that the NHL could ever bridge that gap, but I applaud them for trying different things, and I applaud the teams that make the grassroots efforts. I mean, you see kids in the NHL from Southern California. You see them, like you said, from Florida. There's kids from St. Louis playing, kids from Philadelphia area. Certainly, of course, Boston's always been a traditional feeder. And, I think the other thing too is college hockey. I've always wanted to see like UCLA or USC or some of the schools out here get into college hockey. Imagine what that would do for it.
Now it's going to become even a greater challenge because now with the NIL, with the new playoff system, with college
Mhm.
football and basketball, those being given top notch in all these universities, you're only going to have maybe 25 schools that are able to spend the kind of money it will take to win a
Yeah,
national championship in those sports. And they're going to focus on those sports because of the dollars that can be made. And there won't
right.
be enough money left over for even a lot of the track and field or a lot of the women's sports. Even Title IX has been neglected in a lot of areas.
Right. I mean, UCLA and USC and some of the other local schools here have club teams, and they play at the Kings practice facility or the Ducks practice facility at 10:30 at night, and they're actually fun games. I mean, these are people who are committed to this. If you're going to go schlep out to Anaheim from UCLA or whatever, but it's a tough question that the NHL. I don't know what the answer is. I'd love to see people try and figure it out.
Is it not fair to say, Helene, that hockey players, and we both have interviewed players from every single possible sport, but that hockey players, and this is not something that a lot of people want to talk about because it's not controversial. They're some of the nicest guys
Mhm.
you'll ever meet in a sport because there is a family base that most of them began with, and a lot of them just have an appreciation for the game. It's like, wow, I made it here and I worked hard to get here, and I've got family and friends behind me, but they're just nice guys, and they're not assholes like some of the guys that
They're
some
the
of the
most down
players
to
that we've
earth,
dealt
and
with.
generally that's true, but the one thing that I've always thought is that one of the charms of hockey actually works against its growth. One of the charms to me of hockey is the team aspect. You'll see guys have great individual achievements, and they'll say, "Well, I couldn't have done it without my line mates. I couldn't have done it without my teammates." It's this kind of hockey code that you always frame it in a team
Yeah.
setting. But what gets people's attention, gets fame and endorsements is, the culture of me. You know, I'm the greatest. I'm this. I'm that. You don't get that in hockey, and it's lovely, but I think it also works against people getting to know these players.
I think that's fair too, because in a lot of the other sports, even though they're all team sports, it is still I'm the big bad stud, and I'm the one
Hmm.
that's going to carry things here. And you
Hmm.
rarely hear that. But there's also, and you've kind of hit on a second point here. There's also a locked down mental attitude in the National Hockey League. What happens in the locker room really stays in the locker room in hockey. I mean, these guys seem to guard that more than anything else. But in other sports, there are controversies, there are issues, there are legal issues, there are problems, there are felonies committed. And everything kind of seeps out of the locker room and gets out into the overall space, if you will. Then social media blows it up. But it's almost as if you do something illegal or stupid, you're going to get more attention than if you do something for your team and your fans.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think hockey players have always been the most down to earth, and I think a lot of it is, as you said, the background, the mentality. Um, but I also think some of it is realizing that hockey is not the primary sport in a lot of cities. In Boston, it gets great treatment. Chicago for the past, what, 15, 20 years it has. For years before that, though, I mean, it was like the Blackhawks were dead. Nobody cared about them
They
until
still don't
they.
care about him in some spots.
Well, I agree, but I mean, you can't please everyone, and that
Right.
I think if you try to, you have lost your sense of purpose, and you've lost the essence of your sport. There are always going to be people who will get turned off by the fighting in hockey. I can understand that. It's like hockey's the only sport where if you start a fight or you get into a fight, you're not ejected.
It's encouraged in some ways. It's a
It is, it
retaliatory move.
absolutely is. I mean, it's not as prevalent as it used to be there's not the enforcers, and there's not like the, Philadelphia Flyer Broad Street bullies
Isn't
kind of
it funny
stuff
how still after all these years, Helene,
all
every
these
time we talk
years.
about
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
we go right back to the Flyers and right back
that's
to Dave
true.
Schultz.
Absolutely true, and Dave Brown and all these characters, but, there are people who are gonna say, "Why are they letting them fight?" And I can understand that. I absolutely do. But you're also going to get the fans who say, hockey, fighting's an integral part of hockey. You're in an enclosed space, large human beings wearing, armor and carrying weapons, essentially. How do you let out the steam? This is how they let out the steam. I mean, certainly fighting has decreased by a lot. It really has.
Oh
But
yeah.
there's still the things where you see, guys throw down the gloves before the face-off. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I think it hurts the game overall. I really do.
It always has seemed to me that in all the other sports, save for hockey, there is an entitlement factor. These players, from the time they're young, are, and this is nothing new. This goes back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I remember this when I covered college athletics. It is still the players that are seen as gods by their fans and the people who want to follow them. And they are entitled. Now with social media, these players are even more entitled. And now with NIL, they're even more entitled, especially in basketball, more than any other sport, where they walk in as stars immediately, and you better appreciate me. You better root for me because I'm the guy that's going to bring you a title. Look, the only thing, Helene, I can say is that Cooper Flagg, who was picked number 1 this year in the NBA draft, this kid has none of that. I mean, it's just like, it is that breath of fresh air, but that entitlement factor, Helene, and I think there are people in sports media that feed that want to be part of that, and
That
they
make
make
a
it
living
even
off
worse.
it. Absolutely. Yeah. I think, the other thing is too is that, you turn on your TV during college basketball season and you're going to see how many games, or you buy a streaming package or whatever, you can see dozens of college basketball games. Tell me how many college hockey games you can see.
None.
Very
Well,
few.
maybe one if you've
Yeah.
got a local
Or
cable system.
right. And, these guys, are the hockey players there's still more of an anonymity factor. I mean, people were asking me before the NHL draft, well, who do you think's going to get drafted? I really couldn't answer that. I mean, I just from what I read, but you don't see them. College basketball, you see these kids before they hit the NBA. College football, you see those kids before they hit the NFL. You can already build up a relationship and identity. You know the guy's story before he lands in your city on your team. That's
Well, and then
not the
is that
case in
is that
hockey.
something that the NHL is missing? Because when you think about it, the NFL has built its brand with not just the games themselves, but with everything else that's around it. I mean, the NFL draft at Lambeau Field this year, I mean, that was like a major rock concert. That was like Live Aid had come to the stadium again.
Yeah.
And they have all these stories and all these scouting services, and then the social media pitches it out there with all the different videos and audios about the kids. Hockey's sort of missing that. They don't focus on the players. It's like the college players are completely anonymous. Well, they're even anonymous with the draft. I mean, it's only the real draftniks that actually know who gets drafted.
Yeah, or when they do try to tell the stories, it seems they do it in a heavy-handed kind of way. I mean, at the NHL draft, I think it was the kid who was drafted number 1. His mom had passed away a few years before, and they just kept hitting this poor kid with questions about his mom. It's an emotional day. It's, big step in his life, and okay, absolutely, it's reasonable to mention it. It's reasonable to discuss it and the effect that it had and how he's helped raise money for charities and all that kind of thing, but they just kept hammering away at it to the point where I just felt bad for the kid. They don't know how to tell the stories as well as they should, and
That's
believe
good.
me, there are plenty of stories out there.
Well, there's another thing too. I mean, a lot of the stories of hockey players when they hit college, they're not controversial at all. I mean, they're just like kids from the neighborhood. But a lot of times when you get the NFL players, or at least the college players in college football and college basketball, everybody wants to dig for the bad part, the controversy. They want to create some controversy there that brings them up, and that's what sells. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and, it may be happening. There may certainly, I'm sure there's misbehavior among college hockey players too, but it's not reported. It's not uh, uh, noticed as closely and as much as other sports. And I think the one thing is that telling stories is a human need almost. It's an instinctive kind of way of passing along history from generation to generation. I mean, when I talk to kids who want to go into journalism, I always tell them that storytelling is an essential instinctive need. How else do folk tales get passed down? How
Yeah.
else does history get passed down? But by people telling their kids who tell their kids who tell their kids, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the way that we tell the stories, newspaper, online, streaming, whatever, podcasts, those things change, but the essential desire to tell a story and the need to tell it well, those will never change. And it's
Speaking
a
of
matter of the people recognizing the value.
the
I
value of
mean,
the
seriously,
story.
exactly, and I think you see now all these leagues, they have some of them are former newspaper, like the NHL has NHL.com. It employs a lot of writers. NBA.com. I would assume NFL.com. I'm not sure.
Yes,
MLB.com.
they do.
A
Same
lot of
thing.
people working there used to be work for daily newspapers or other outlets, and the league only gives them so much leash, I guess is the best way to put it. I forget which one it was, but I think it was NBA.com at one point. The writers were told they should not be breaking stories,
Right.
which is ridiculous. But, you have all these people who are, I don't want to say bending, but it's going to be a slant that's in positive in favor of that league.
Well, but wait a minute.
Um,
But it's fair to say that too. And Mike is going to join us here in a couple of minutes. I'll bring him in on this as well. But when it comes to, and I've always told people, there are writers who write for NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL. They are employed by the teams and the leagues. Their money
mhm.
comes from the league. Do you really think they're going to give you an inside story if they've got it? Because it will hurt the league and hurt the dollar and hurt the marketing. They won't do it.
Exactly.
You'll get it. You'll get a nice fuzzy story, but you won't get the facts. You won't get the truth. You won't get anybody who digs in.
Right, and I think fans should realize that that's, people make fun of newspapers are dead. Well, guess what? That means you're not getting honest reporting from as many
Right.
places as you used to. I
It is a
mean,
biased reporting.
exactly. I mean, I'll listen to post-game press conferences from various teams, and usually the team broadcaster gets to ask the first question, and it's always something that even if it's a 12-0 loss, they'll say, "Are there any positives you can take out of this?" And I
It's
guess the positive
soft,
is that
Helene. It's soft.
it wasn't 15-0. That's the positive. And it just irritates me, but newspapers, and that's a whole nother topic, have killed themselves, have sabotaged themselves. They did not adopt the internet, and they didn't use the internet properly, and that's another topic altogether. But I mean, now you're seeing these places where writers don't travel with teams like they used to. Certainly not in hockey. I'm sure they still do in baseball, although I understand a lot of outlets aren't sending baseball writers on the road anymore.
No,
That means
it's
you're going
all
to
it's
get
all
less.
financial. It's
Right,
all
and you're
financial.
gonna get less information, you're gonna get less straight facts, which is really sad.
Let us get it then from someone else who has covered many,
Uh-huh.
as he is finally off duty fighting the Panama City streets, if you will. Mike
Ow.
Wise joins us on the fastest show in sports. Mike, thank you for coming.
Hello,
We held a space
hello,
for you, buddy. And Helene,
hello, Ed.
and
Thank you.
you froze a second. Come on
The
back.
problem with having kids late in life is, am I on? Am I
Yeah, I know
on?
you're there.
Yeah.
You came back.
The
Yeah.
problem. Okay. Hi, Helene. The problem with having kids late in life is you don't really become a dad. You become an unpaid Uber driver, and all you do is drive your kids around. It's just ridiculous. But to sum up Helene's thing, journalism is dead. It's let's mourn its passing. It's over. I mean, I don't want to go too far, but think about
Now
it. The
I'm
places
yeah.
that
Keep going,
the
Mike. Keep
yeah
going. You're on a roll, baby.
no, but the places that Helene and I sort of, all I could do when I got out of Fresno State University was think, oh my God, one day if I could ever get a job at a real newspaper like the LA Times or the Washington Post or that would make my career. And now, if I was a J school kid and I really wanted to sort of be on the cutting edge of breaking news and again, the administration or having a real serrated edge with my voice, Why would I go to the LA Times and the Washington Post? Both their owners have essentially cowed to the president of the United States and this administration. And so when the legacy media places start doing that, you look around and you go, "Oh my God, is NBA.com hiring?" You know, it's crazy.
Well, but it's the only place that a lot of people get jobs these days. But it's not anything new. I mean, I knew this back in
Yeah.
the 90s and the aughts where people were getting fired or people were getting let go, and they wound up going to NBA.com, NFL.com. And I once talked to one of them, a friend of mine, and said, "How do you do that? Because you're no longer a journalist." And he bristled at me. He said, "What do you mean I'm no longer a journalist? Of course I am." I said, "No, you're not. Who's on your payroll? Whose payroll are you on? You are on the NFL's payroll." I have a friend of mine here in Florida who's really a nice cat. I've known him for a lot of years, but he works for the broadcast outlet that does the Florida Panthers. And anytime I get involved in social media with a Florida Panthers, anything negative, oh no. And he also works for the Marlins, I might add, too. He does their TV. So anytime I say something about the Marlins, the worst franchise in baseball, even worse than Pittsburgh, he says, "Oh, come on, Ed. They're not that bad." To your point, Helene. Oh, come on. They're not that bad. They're going to get better. They suck, for crying out loud. You can't tell the truth because your mortgage is being paid by the Panthers and the Marlins, technically. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent 47 years in the newspaper business. How many other people are going to be able to say that?
None, ever again.
Yeah.
No, that'll be a it's funny how things have changed so much. Not that I look down on the people that work for NBA.com, MLB.com, but at some point I was like, you guys kind of sold out, didn't you? And now I look at a lot of my friends in those industries and I go, you know what? At least they've got a job and at least they're doing work that they want to do. And you can still, without investigating the commissioner, Gary Bettman, and finding out what he's doing, you could also write a hell of a feature about a player or a team that you can still get. And so now, not that I look, but I look at them now and I go, this is great. They're employed. We're just such in a new reality. Like Helene and I used to go to press conferences where questions were asked that were uncomfortable, but the people asked them. Nowadays, you ask those questions, and everybody turns into Nick Saban and why are you asking that? What are you, negative? And so the whole notion of the journalist, the working journalist as watchdog, that whole narrative, even at the White House, has changed. And that's the scariest part. And I think, who was the guy who did the Wire? David Simon. He went before Congress, must have been 10 years ago, and talked about how all these small newspapers were dying. And this is before all the big newspapers caved and started laying off people. His whole message was that this is a great time for corruption in society, and this is going to be a great time for people to get away with things, because when the local newspaper isn't covering your deeds and they're not acting as a watchdog, you can pretty much go up the chain and start doing it everywhere. And he was right. And you look what's happening right now. I mean, from sports on down. I mean, there's people, if people don't look like us, if they're not white, you almost have to carry your passport around or documents now so somebody doesn't grab you.
Well, it's to the point where you said journalism is dead, fair to say. But Helene,
That's a miss. I mean, that's a generalization.
Well, but it's a generalization that works in a lot of ways. But specifically in sports, It would seem that journalism is dead. But it comes down to the point that, do the fans care? Do they want the journalism? Do they want us to dig deep at this point? Or would they rather just see the social media click of the basketball player who's out there hanging with his friends? Or the football player that goes out and is dancing at the club at 2 o'clock in the morning? They'd rather see that. Helene, we've gotten to the point right now where you talked about stories. People don't want to, they don't care about the stories anymore because it's a short little snippet life that we live in. Even this show, when it gets edited, we go down to 2 and 3 minute little clips that people can play on social media, on YouTube Shorts and other places like that, because it's quick, it's easy, it's digestible. Stories are not digestible that quick. You got to dig into them.
Short attention span theater, yeah.
There it is.
It's yeah, and I mean, I just thinking back again to I'll read Kings fans comments on lakings.com just to get a sense of what fans are thinking. And sometimes I'll see people say, "How come you didn't ask the team writer?" They'll say, "How come you didn't ask the tough questions?" Well, that's not his job. Sometimes they want the tough questions asked. Sometimes they don't. If the team is going well, they tend to be resistant to criticism. If the team is going badly, it's the end of the world, and they want those, fire so and so. Why isn't so and so fired? And that kind of thing. And I think, Mike, what you just said is true. This is a great time for corruption, for mismanagement, for teams to not be transparent. The whole thing in with the Knicks with Leon Rose. When was the last time he spoke to a reporter? Ever?
Good point.
And they
Yeah.
get away with it
General
because
man, they get the yeah.
Okay, Helene, you put two words together here that are kind of interesting.
Uh-oh.
In
Leon
journalism.
Rose? No,
No,
kidding.
not Leon Rose. Well, yeah, Leon. Let's
Rose,
see. The
no,
first
wait.
name of my uncle, Rose, something I give my wife every time on her birthday. There you go. Okay, one degree of separation. But when it comes to sports journalism and sports controversy, and whether or not people really want to hear it, it's that difference between covering a sport and marketing a sport. That's really what it is. But you use the word corruption in there as well. What is there corrupt in sports? I know I'm going to open this up, and there's a lot in there. The three of us all sit here and we know what the corruption in sports is. For instance, to me, it was always the biggest one that the National Football League covers up the fact that they cannot protect their players from CTE, no matter what they do. Players will get it. You can put big helmets on them, whatever you want, and it's still going to happen. But what is that corruption in sports that fans need to care about?
Well, I'll hit you with one. A number of years ago, the LA Kings had a Russian defenseman, who was beating up his wife, and to the point where she had to go to the emergency room. And I read some of the testimony at the hearing or trial or whatever it was, where the emergency room nurse said she hadn't ever seen injuries that bad. And apparently it wasn't the first time it had happened. You have to think that somebody on the team knew about that.
And
Certainly
nobody wanted
players
to say anything
on
because
each
they could,
other.
well, as you pointed out, the team writers aren't going to say anything. But then again,
If
there's
they
also
knew, which is entirely possible they didn't. But, to me, how many times have we seen teams or coaches defend players who have been accused of assault or have actually been convicted of assault?
Well, yeah.
Because they're good players.
Ray Rice was fine. Roger Goodell was playing. God not bless him. He was playing marriage counselor with Ray Rice and his now wife, who he knocked out in an elevator,
Mhm.
and this was at a time when, any victim's advocate person, whatever, would tell you that the perpetrator, doesn't matter who he is, you don't sit in the room with him and have a conversation about how things got bad. But Roger Goodell took on the role of a marriage counselor or a psychologist, and it wasn't until that video came out that anybody was appalled by Ray Rice beating up his wife. Before that, it was just a police report, and maybe this happened. And then you see this video, and you go, "Oh my God!" And all of a sudden, the Ravens, they're not acting out of good character or ethical or moral clarity. They're acting out of the public's perception, and that's scary. If you're just waiting for the public to tell you when you're wrong, and you'll do anything you can if it's hidden in the closet, that's a scary place to be. Any organization and any corporation, it's just it's not healthy.
well, but here's the next point of this. As sports reporters and real journalists who aren't getting paid by the teams, how far do we dig? Because most people don't care about what goes on. And let's face it, if we cover a team or if we're around a team or a league for a long stretch of time, or even a short stretch of time, we hear things. We know what goes on. I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I was covering the University of Miami football team back in its heyday, I knew who the guys were who were dropping coke on a nightly basis, who were out basically using the hooker services, who were taking money under the table from guys who were paying them just to play the game. But I couldn't say it. I was told not to say it by a member of the University of Miami athletic department who said, if you say it, I'll cut you off. You'll never have access to this team again or this program again. Don't you dare. So what's that line that we have to draw as bringing it forward and having a little courage, I guess, but at the same time, if we have courage, we lose our jobs.
Well, really quickly, Ed, let's just be honest here.
Please.
You were paying for hookers. You were taking drugs.
You're not supposed
your
to
story
say
is
that, Mike.
completely.
You're not supposed to say that. That has all been buried, and as a matter of fact, it was sealed in the record, so it was not able to be said. So now you're breaking the legalese here, man. That's a sealed record. Mike's kidding. Mike's kidding.
I like. You're off Mike's camera now, aren't you? Yeah.
I like what Helene said, like things that go on, that there are people on the fans websites, on other places where there's a real interest in that deeper level. I don't know if everything has to be corruption, drugs, or hooker. That's a dilemma that, depending on where you were working at the time, that's a real tough dilemma. And especially if the team's got a sponsorship deal with your news organization or your radio station, that's a scary. Like, there's things. I had to go on this show on NBC, the local Washington football team, and and everything was pro, and everything I would bring up negative, and if finally I was against the team's name, but eventually I just told them I can't do this because you guys have a sponsorship deal. I'm like, basically I'm working for the team. But I also think there are stories that you say fans don't want them. There are stories, and I know Helene's the same way. Like you gain the trust of a player, and you get to know that person or a coach, and they trust you enough to tell you their story. In my case, one of them was Donald Brashear, the enforcer for the Capitals, who, like, I was going to do a funny story about how he's always in the penalty box. And I say, I'm going to interview you in the penalty box. And at some point I said, how'd you end up, being this guy that just beats up people? And he says, it's because my father beat me growing up. And I was like, uh-oh, this isn't the story I thought I was doing. This isn't. And so I took a year and found the dad that abandoned him, the mom, the foster mom, all that stuff. And I don't think newspaper, and I wrote a compelling story with his permission because he kind of wanted to know what happened to his mom himself. And it took me a year to do that story. And I had an editor who Helene, I think, knows, Emilio Garcia Ruiz, who was fully supportive of that and gave me that year while I was writing columns and whatnot to do a long enterprise story on that. And it really, I don't know if I healed him. I don't know, but I had some real emotional moments with Donald Brashear. And when that story came out, I mean, even during the playoffs, Gary Bettman came up to me and said, "Jesus, that's an unbelievable." And it made me feel like I did something more than the usual, team story every day. Well, I'm not pulling my own. I'm not pumping myself up as much as I'm saying that there's the resources committed and the money needed and the time spent in editing and travel and all that. And those stories are just almost dying and dead. And that's where we lose a lot, I think, because there is something about whoever it might be, whoever it might be, Kachuk, any of the Panthers. There's a deeper story there that probably people want to know that the newspapers and media organizations don't even want to get to anymore.
Is it possible, Helene, to even tell these stories anymore, knowing that, much like our current administration, if you will, in Washington, will discount certain reporters, keep them out, freeze them out, and make sure that they can no longer ask questions, can no longer be part of the marketing effort? So you have a team there that wants to sell tickets. They want you, and we do as reporters sometimes, become part of the overall marketing and PR effort with the stories we write. But how do we do it now? How does an honest journalist do it to tell those stories when you know the team will lock down? And with social media out there, you'll get a couple of nickel and dimers who come in here and all of a sudden they have a phone and they're able to record a video. More people are watching that than they're paying attention to us.
That's a good question. I think Mike made a very good point about Emilio being so supportive and allowing him to take the time to dig, to do the story right. There are a few editors now who would allow that, I'm guessing. You know, just going back to the LA Times, which I know best, is that they're so short-staffed now. The Lakers beat writer left to go to the Athletic. They're not hiring anybody to replace him. That's like the
Wow.
prime beat in the
That's the
sports department.
Lakers.
The
Yeah, I
Lakers
mean,
and the
that's
Dodgers are the two prime beats. They're not hiring somebody to replace him. They're making another reporter cover 3 or 4 different things. So,
Wow.
as Mike said, Mike said he took a year to do the Brashear story. That can't happen in many places anymore. Maybe it can at the
Yeah.
Washington Post, which is still deeper in its sports department, and maybe the New York Times because they have the Athletic, and the Athletics has so many tentacles and so many people out there. It can't happen at the LA Times anymore. It can't happen at the Chicago Tribune, I don't think, anymore. It can't happen in so many places anymore because the pressure is on to, you've got to keep the website updated. You've got to, Dave Roberts spit to his left instead of his right last night. What's wrong with Dave Roberts? You're drawn into those kind of clickbait things that, I mean, one of my last years working at the LA Times, we would get these performance reviews, and my editor's critique of me was that I didn't promote myself enough.
right.
And my thought was, if that's the worst thing you can say about me, I feel okay. But still, it's this idea of self-promotion that was so foreign to me. I understand it though, and there are people who I
You
never
know,
was. I didn't want to be.
you know who can do it though, but who won't do it? Because we're all talking about having the ability and the people there. ESPN. Now, hear me out on this. ESPN makes hundreds of millions of dollars through Disney. They are one of the richest media outlets to do sports in world history. They've got the money, they've got the people. They're laying a lot of them off these days to basically keep the mouse happy, but they've got the people, the wherewithal, the way to do it. They could dig the stories. The old Bob Lee, once again, we go back to that where real stories were being told, even 30 for 30, where stories are being told, but they won't do it anymore because they're in bed with the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and the Olympics and college football. You'll never hear, if a kid at a college right now is arrested on an assault charge, ESPN will put that at the bottom of the Sports Center because it's their partner. They can't screw with their partners. So at that point, how can we fight that? I mean, that's what I swear to God to both of you. That's what I'm trying to do with this show a little bit. Just be honest. Be honest and tell the real stories. Don't care. We don't have to worry about being fired by Disney, which is not a bad thing sometimes. But just kidding. But we can tell the truth, and people need to listen to these. But we get drowned out by the ESPNs who are more marketing than they are telling stories.
To follow up on what Helene said about promoting yourself and how that's become such a big thing. I kind of, to get my job at the New York Times, I had to promote. It was something endemic to me. But even someone made a joke. I can't remember who it was, but Helene worked with one of like 4 sports columnists in the history of mankind to win a Pulitzer Prize, Jim Murray. And Jim Jim Murray had these incredible leads and used metaphor and simile, and he brought people into the sports page that wouldn't normally even pick up the page because of his humor and his depth and his emotion. But but my friend cringed. He said, "Could you imagine if Twitter was around when Jim Murray was, and Jim Murray would have to get on his own account and go, 'Hey guys, the Indianapolis 500 is happening today. Like, check out my lead, gentlemen. Start your coffins. You like it?'" Like, I mean, come on.
I would
That
like
was
to
the
be there
beauty
in
of the
that room
paper.
today. Somebody told Jim Murray to do that.
Picking up the physical product and seeing that lead was part of the joy of reading and newspapers. And so I think that, yeah, and to the point of ESPN, there are a couple good NFL reporters still. Seth Wickersham, gosh, who's the other guy? I used to work with him in the Don Van Natta, and they actually cover the NFL like few people do. And I'm sure they still have a problem with real journalism independence, but they're about as frank and transparent as they can when they write about the
as they
owners
can
and
be, though, as they can be, because if one of those reporters
Belichick.
came out with a story and went to their editor and went to the managing editors and said, "I get a great story on this kid, and here's what it is," and if it damages the brand, don't we all three know that it will be killed? Stop. Don't stop right there. Bury it. Do something. Hold on to it, because we can't hurt the brand. We can't hurt the money trail.
I
I
don't know.
think
I can because go ahead, Helene. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say tangentially that I think ESPN is one of the great stories of our time. The rise of ESPN, the growth and what it has become.
Yes.
And I'd love to see somebody do a really deep dive on that. I mean, people made fun of it when it started. I mean, they were showing quoits tournaments, if those kind of things. And look what it's become. It's become this megalith that just controls everything, as you said, Ed. I mean, just it controls all these media rights, so it controls all these leagues, and it indirectly controls the news that we see.
Well, that's
It's
the
almost
word right there. They control the news. There's no
yeah,
question.
yeah. And they can slant it or report it or not report it to fit their needs, and they do.
And then you have to worry about,
Yeah.
Mike, who comes in here and who actually is the one who changes things, who brings the stories forward. If you've got a reporter like yourself who's got a great story and they tell you to bury it, where do you go from there? You bury it. You have no choice. You're out of a job.
Well, I just want to write about the media organizations now, or like just the whole or the people in my business that have gone to the far right that I don't even believe some of them are convicted about their beliefs, but they've understood that there's sadly enough, a revenue stream of the angry white manosphere male that they can appeal to, and it's frightening, but that's where some of the people in our business are going, and all that stuff, like the whole notion of fine. I get it, building your personal brand. I don't get sacrificing who you are, or just just going down into some depth that I can't even imagine. And if I'm talking about somebody specifically, it's probably Jason Whitlock, who was once a friend. While we disagreed on a lot of things, he
Despicable.
was a good ideas guy. He had a great idea. He was a good ideas guy, and he had, and now he's just become this provocateur, this right wing provocateur that makes angry white guys feel good about their choices in life, which is just
But he
sad.
does it because he's promoting his brand, Mike. We go right back to exactly what we've been talking about.
Well, it's the only place. The crazy conservative websites are the only place that would hire him and give him money at this point. So
But I mean,
And
Stephen
I
A.
apparently,
think
Smith.
that's.
I mean, do you remember when Stephen A. Smith started out? He was a newspaper reporter.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
and I visit this website called awfulannouncing.com that reports on different media and related issues. And at one point, I was almost going to leave a comment on the website saying, "Does Stephen A. Smith pay you to write about him every day?" He's great at self-promotion.
a
Then
friend
I
of mine
didn't leave the
actually is in
comment because I
charge of that
figured they'd
website,
they'd trace it somehow and I'd be embarrassed. But look at Stephen A. Smith and God bless. He's a rich man. He has great ambitions. Good for him. But it's like there's no there.
no, there isn't. It's a screaming job, is all it is.
Exactly.
Scream loudest, and you get heard. But he
That's
has
why I
the
know I don't watch those talk shows. I mean, I may be one of the few sports fans in the world who didn't watch Pardon the Interruption. I don't watch any of those shows
never did,
because they're just people screaming.
never did.
Who can scream the loudest and build up his brand the best? I don't want that. I don't need people. There's a great song by Mary Chapin Carpenter. Tell me something I don't know instead of everything I do. Okay,
Hmm.
those people aren't telling me anything I don't know.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this show, because I'm hoping that there can be intelligent people that can push things forward that people don't know instead of what they know. Like they know that Mike Wise doesn't have any hair, but that's kind of obvious.
Ooh.
We do this all
No,
the time.
that's all right.
By the way,
I've never met a comb I could part with.
maybe very little.
But I'm
I
Hey,
yeah,
Helene, I
but a
wanted to
bump,
point
yeah.
this out in part of this conversation when we've been talking about social media. Real quick, a couple things before we get out of here. Social media has that hook onto people where they believe anything, no matter how insipidly stupid it is. They will believe it and fall for it. And I wanted to show you both this. I picked this off of Facebook this morning. This is from a site called, or a panel called Florida Panthers Fan Group. And it has pictures of some of the young ladies, some of the little girls who died in the recent Camp Mystic floods. And the story here is that Brad Marchand showed up at a house, gave them millions of dollars, donated to them, helped them, didn't ask for any media, didn't ask for any ballyhoo whatsoever. It's a lie. It's all false. He didn't do any of this. And I've seen a number of these where one says that Brad Marchand gave up his season's winnings. He gave up the money he won in the Stanley Cup. He gave $15 million.
It's the same thing that he gave up. He gave up his bonus, which there isn't one, of like $14 million to build homes for the homeless.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
completely
Yeah, and
phony.
then next week it'll be Jalen Brunson. It's all either AI or it's somebody who's emotionally manipulating you, trying to get clicks. But you're right, we're in such a
This is what we're
backward
fighting.
world. You and I can recognize that. We can recognize that, but there's a lot of people who aren't as sophisticated, and they see it and they believe it, and it's where we are in society. It's sadly enough, it's I mean, what I don't know if I told you, but I remember the guy who was Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen. He shows up he gets this ADL award several years ago, big award from maybe it was
The
the
guy who
Jewish
played
Defense League. I
Borat.
can't remember. Yeah, and he comes up to the microphone and he goes, "This is the first time I'm going to be a character I've never been, Sacha Baron Cohen." And he basically goes into a 17, 18-minute speech, and it was brilliant. He didn't even look at a teleprompter or anything, about how we live in an age where the biggest companies in the world, the trillion-dollar companies, are all tech companies. They're all Silicon Valley, and the responsibility of those companies and at one point we debated issues like gun control and abortion and capital punishment, all these things, and there was an agree to disagree, even though it could get nasty. But now there's an alternative set of facts universe. And now that the alternative facts are out there, it doesn't matter anymore. And that the Facebook and Meta and Twitter and Google embrace this stuff because it helps keep their bottom line going, and their advertisements going, that they're responsible for a lot of the discourse and the disinformation. And it was brilliant. The whole thing was brilliant. But I was like, the whole time I was thinking, oh my God, that's the world we live in. Is truth isn't truth anymore.
It's what we're fighting because, as I pointed out, and I go back to that Brad Marchand post, there were all kinds of posts in there. What a wonderful guy. What a nice guy. What a brilliant human being. Thank you so much for doing this. I wrote on it, I said, when are you people going to stop being suckers? Because all you have to do is get on Google. You Google Brad Marchand, Texas, floods, and you hit go. You hit return. And the top 3 stories for this were all from Facebook. Nothing from a legitimate source, nothing from a legacy source, nothing from anybody that had any kind of affirmation whatsoever on it. It's a lie. And that's what we're fighting half the time, because people will come up. I've had people come up to me before and say, why don't you cover such and such a story on the show? I said, because it's not true. It's a social media nonsense story.
A good friend of mine reposted the false Mookie Betts story on her Facebook page. And I left a comment saying, this is not true. He had made a smaller donation a few days prior to some local group, which was lovely. But this particular story was saying he gave $14 million for the homeless. And that just was not true. She just put it up on her Facebook page, and she's an educated, she's a lawyer. She's an, and if it can fool somebody with her level of education and sophistication and intelligence, you can understand how it fools other people.
I wish somebody would make up a post about me being generous. It could really do a lot for me.
I'll do that
That's
for you.
fiction.
Like, and also, but you know what? There are some good. I always say the worst thing about the internet is everybody has a platform, and the best thing about it is sometimes everybody has a platform.
Here's the platform.
The fact that Elmo's account got hacked on Twitter
I
last night.
saw that.
Oh my,
Oh, God.
that is just tremendous. If you are a
That's
computer hacker out there and you have the ability to do something like that, that's brilliant. I mean, it was anti-Semitic and he had some swear words and it was over the top. But oh my God, it was like Jon Stewart did a bit on it last night on Comedy Central. It was beyond funny.
And the first time I heard about that was when I was flipping through social media, and there was a post from somebody I know who wrote it. Wow, did you hear what Elmo said? What's happening at Sesame Street? With a question mark, and then had the video up. He fell for it completely. I actually instant messaged him back. I said, "Where'd you go? Oh, didn't you hear about this?" I said, "It's not true." He comes back, "Really?" And all it took was a couple of minutes to look. By the way, where did you guys cross paths?
Well, I think Helene and I probably ended up at the same NBA game at some point, or in a press box somewhere between LA and New York, because I was at the New York Times. Um, her her former husband, Dennis DiAgostino, one of the best people I've ever met, and God rest his soul, because he really was a special human being. He used to work for the Knicks, and I think even though I knew Helene before. I knew that they were going out. I think they kept it secret for a while, by the way, and that I did, like so I would see her
Busted.
there, and she had this, and Helene always had this sort of didn't suffer fools, no bullshit. Don't just tell me what's going on. And I always thought, wow, we need more of this in our business. And she, there was always this really human quality about her, but also this acerbic quality that I really liked. And so at any rate, I think do you remember where we met, Helene?
Probably while I was working for Newsday. I
Oh,
started out
duh.
I started at the Chicago Sun-Times, and then I went to Newsday for 10 years. So it was probably during that time. Yeah,
When did you leave Newsday?
I left in '89 to go to
So
LA.
so I didn't get to the New York Times until '94. So we definitely met
Okay.
when you were at the LA Times.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because I did a fair amount of
Yeah,
NBA coverage. Well, I covered the Lakers for
yeah,
a little while, and then I did some other columns, NBA
yeah.
Laker related stuff too. Yeah.
You're going to keep writing, aren't you?
Me?
Yeah.
I have a Substack. I've done a few freelance things. I hope so. Had some health issues I had to deal with, but I'm kind of, I wouldn't say up and running, up and crawling, or up and jogging at this point. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, as long as you know, Mike, I told Helene when she came on the show, we started the show. I used to have a radio show called The Press Box that I did back in the '90s, and Helene was the first hockey writer that we had on the show, and it
But
was
not the last, I hope.
not the last. Helene,
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm one of the few guys out there. Every market I've ever been in, they've always come to me and asked me hockey questions because I know the sport. I was a hockey fan when I was a kid. I was the kid in New York City who got beaten up by the bigger kids because I was an Islanders fan, and they were all Rangers fans. So I
Great
had
man.
to.
I backdoored into hockey in a weird way because I was in Northern California. I was till I was 12. We moved to Hawaii. My stepmom and my dad when I was 12, and I was there till I was 20. And I got a call from the New York Times sports editor out of the blue one day. I still don't know how he got my number, and he said, "Can you go do a freelance hockey story for us in Vancouver on Pavel Bure? They're about to face the Rangers in the Stanley Cup, and he plays for the Vancouver. And you do hockey, right?" And I'm like, having watched the Miracle on Ice and no other hockey, in my life, I was like, "Oh, I love hockey. I do hockey," and of course, uh, I ended up becoming very fond of it actually when I went to New York and the Rangers, and then I started covering it when the Capitals would make their run every year in Washington. But I still don't know it. I certainly don't know it like both of you.
Yeah, but come on, how often did all of us get an assignment at some time in our career? Gee, you know about all this, don't
Where we
you?
had
Oh,
to fake
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah,
no.
that's true.
Helene,
Yeah,
I
we
got to
had to
tell you,
fake it. You're right.
when I was working in Boston and I was doing a show there, they got the rights to some college hockey in Boston. And I was the main anchor of their show. And the executive producer comes to me and said, we've got BC and Northeastern coming up that we've got in a couple of weeks. Have you ever done hockey before? Oh, yeah. Oh, man. God, yeah. I've done hockey before. Had never, ever in my life picked up a mic for a hockey game. And I'm going to tell you, it was the toughest thing I've ever done. Out of all the sports I've ever done, there is no sport that is more difficult to call, that needs a greater attention to detail, and that has so many moving parts than hockey. It blew me away. I think I did maybe 15, 20 games the years I was there, and I got better.
Yeah.
But that first time, he's got the puck.
Helene, how many Olympics did you cover?
18.
Yeah, I covered 7, and if you, Ed, you show up at the Olympics, and of course you might have your sport that you're tethered to for a while, but at some point your editor's going to ask you to go to ski
Handball.
slope style skiing or rhythmic gymnastics, or we have a fencer fighting today for a gold medal. And I was like, oh my God, I've never been to a fencing match. Well, of course, that we all get to make it up eventually.
Well, I mean, water polo, I remember going to the Sydney Olympics, the 2000 Sydney Olympics, and water polo is big in Southern California. So we were covering it, and they said, can you do water polo? Oh, yeah, sure. I'd never seen a water polo game in my life, but I loved it. And I still do. I still follow it. It's just so exciting and so fast paced. And those athletes, you can't touch the bottom of the pool. You're swimming the entire time.
Yeah.
Holy moly, that's just amazing to me. And again, there are some great stories there. I did a piece a few years ago on the goalkeeper on the women's Olympic team, a Black woman who was trying to get other Black athletes into the sport. And it was fascinating. Talking about how she learned how to swim. Her mother made her learn how to swim because, the kids in the neighborhood, it would have been unsafe. And, from swimming, she got into water polo, and she started all these programs in South Florida, actually, to try and get more Black and Latino kids into water polo. And that was fabulous. I love watching water polo. It's, blood in the water. It's just, it's amazing. It's ferocious.
There it is. We get hooked on these sports. That college hockey experience sure hooked me on hockey. Once I was right down there on the boards, and I saw the first hit. Of course, I had a boxing background at that point. I said, this is just like boxing. It was so much fun. Reminder, everybody, that if you want to go ahead and watch the show, you can always catch the Fastest Show in Sports on the YouTube channel. We are on all the major audio platforms for podcasts. All you do is search out the Fastest Show in Sports. You can get a hold of Mike Wise. Helene Elliott also, she is on Facebook, X, but also you said you're on Substack as well, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm telling you, you must go subscribe to Helene's stories, because I have been following her for decades, and she is one of the most brilliant writers that I've ever had the pleasure to see. You're very welcome. Gentlemen, lady, thank you very much. Everybody, make sure you catch us again. For Mike Wise, for Helene Elliott, I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks for joining us on the Fastest Show in Sports. Until next time, we'll do it all again. Rock on, true believers. See ya!
That's all, folks.